Some folks can make an entrance.
Well, Father, it's an honor to stand before these men and women and just to pray for them tonight. I thank you so much for them and their service to our community, and I thank you for our mayor and his service of many years. I thank you for these men and women who serve on the city council, and I pray that tonight you would give them a spirit to speak honestly, truthfully, give them the ability to respect one another, the ability to make decisions that are best for our community, to do the right thing. I thank you, Father, for our police force and our fire rescue team. I thank you for these men and women who put their lives at risk for our community, the EMT and others. And we're grateful for them, and we just pray a special blessing upon them, especially during this heat, that you would protect them outdoors. I thank you, Father, for our hospital and other agencies in our community that really try to help people. I thank you for our churches and parachurch ministries, Father, that really try to help people. We love our community. We're thankful for it. And we're so thankful for these men and women who love it also. We pray, Father, for those who have served in foreign wars so that we could be free tonight. We pray for our president. We pray for our leaders. Give these men and women wisdom to seek you for guidance and direction for our country. So on behalf of our community, we thank you. And we lift these things up to you in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Alden.
Here.
Burnett.
Here.
Castleberry.
Here.
Comfort.
Here.
Dross.
Here.
Hermson.
Here.
Ocean.
Here.
Okay. Moving on, the first item for the meeting has to do with community comments. This item is reserved to receive comments from the community for concerns whether or not they're included in the current agenda. The community is encouraged to speak before the mayor and city council, asked to keep statements brief, time limited to no more than 3 minutes. Any questions are to be asked of the city staff, council members, or the mayor prior to speaking to the full council, so that way concerns can be properly researched and perhaps answered away from the meeting. Comments are to be directed to the mayor and city council only. Is there anyone who would like to speak tonight? Yes, sir. Let's come to the microphone. Yep. Name and address.
I'm Scott Versteg. I live at 1643 290th Street. I'm here to speak a little bit about the inspection process for landlords that we go through. First, I'd like it known I'm not opposed to these inspections at all, and some accolades for the company that does the inspections. They're always on time. They work with us well on adjusting to our time schedule. They're very polite in some circumstances. If there's a battery missing out of a smoke detector or something, they say, hey, if you got one with your place, we'll move on. With that being said, there's always room for improvement on these programs. Some things I've noticed over the last few years, there's no consistency. So they may inspect you 3 years, come and look at the same house, nothing's changed, maybe there's some improvements, and they'll go, well, we didn't see that last time, so we're going to fail it this time. Well, that probably isn't right. We need to have some way to work through those kind of processes, and it doesn't feel like an avenue to do that right now. Other things that I feel, they're starting to get subjective about things. So some of my tenants are not the greatest housekeepers in the world. They'll say, well, this house is too messy, this apartment is too messy, it's going to fail. Well, I don't think that's good to be subjective on those kind of things. I think the city itself needs to have some more skin in the game. As far as when there's failures, maybe the city should be involved walking us through. If there's subjective things, they need to help us walk through it and let's get these processes fixed better. I think it's a bit of a could be, I can see it could be self-promoting. If a property fails, that inspector comes back again at the time we schedule, we pay him $75 again. So for example, I had a property, he said these wires aren't grounded. I said, well, it's only a 2-wire system, it's not going to show ground. Well, it failed anyway because it's not grounded. So I paid $150 for a licensed electrician to come say these are wired properly. they were gracious enough to go, you know, we're gonna go ahead and waive the reinspection fee. Well, it doesn't matter, I just spent $150 anyway, when something that you should have known, when we told you, pull the outlet out, install 2 wires, that should have been the end of that one. There's other things that I think we could help improve the process, get a team together with some of the landlords, some of the city employees, and the inspectors, and let's have a working session, figure out, hey, can we make this better? Maybe have a voice of the customers, of the landlords, hey, here's 5 questions, what do you guys think about this process you're going through? None of that currently exists. And the last thing that I really struggle with, it seems like the same set of rules aren't applying to a homeowner that lives in his residence versus the landlord property right next to it. And it's almost like there's a bit of a discrimination value, and I don't feel good about that. So, with that being said, that's all I really wanted to say about it. I'm not opposed to the system, to the process, there's room for improvement. I'd like some help getting improvement. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Is there anyone else who would like to speak tonight? Okay, seeing none, I'll move on. Next is to consider the adoption of the consent agenda as presented. These are all items that are routine in nature, and so they're handled as a single motion. I did want to point out to the council items J, K, and L. J is a resolution setting a public hearing for August 15th of 2022, levying special assessment for a nuisance abatement. That's at 511 South First in accordance with Oskaloosa Municipal Code 8.08.080. Item K is a resolution scheduling a public hearing on August 15th. That's for vacation and sale of a 120-foot by 16.5-foot section of an east-west alley. That's adjacent to 408 South B Street. And item L, that is to consider a resolution scheduling a public hearing on August 15th of 2022 for vacation and sale of a 60-foot by 16.5-foot section of the east-west alley adjacent to 804 5th Avenue East. So anyway, those are the items. Do we have a motion of support for the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I have one comment on item, let's see, H,
Okay.
about the sidewalk. Not so much about the sidewalk itself, but it states it's in accordance with the active transportation plan. That active transportation plan we have is dated 2017. I was wondering if we can get that thing updated. More so the sidewalk section towards the back of the plan. I know we've done a lot of sidewalks here and there, and I think that'll help the staff to say, hey, here's what's left, or whatever, or revisit, maybe we don't need to do it, or what have you. So I know that's a lot of work. That's a big list. But if that could be worked on, you know, whatever.
So is it Sean or who do I talk to about sidewalks? You or?
Courtney.
I'm not sure who to address the question to here. There's 3 of you. Take your pick. So.
That would be me.
Okay. So who decides? I mean, I'm just curious to Joe's thing. I think it is interesting. So I'm sure there's still a number of sidewalks in town, or a number of places in town that need sidewalks. How is it determined priority-wise which one we do next? I'm not saying this doesn't need to be done. I'm just curious what the process is to determine which one gets done next.
I believe engineering technicians following the plans that are in place and also conditioned and available.
In this case, there isn't a sidewalk, right?
No.
Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to figure out. We have lots of places without sidewalks. How does somebody determine what goes next? So we do this one. What's the next one?
Yeah.
How do we determine what the next one is?
I've had
So I believe they have.
I'm not being critical. I'm just asking a question. So yeah.
No.
They would go back to the plan. It's an extension.
Yeah.
The goal is to cover all city neighborhoods.
Okay.
So a lot of times, whatever convenience, if there's a project, there's synergy with that project, so we'll go in that direction.
Okay.
Or go based on funding, start on a segment, and then pick up next year from that end.
May I
I'm
comment?
not sure that answers my question, but yeah. Okay.
May I add a comment? In the transportation plan, in the sidewalk section, there's a column there of priorities. It looks like it's 1 through 3. And the one we're talking about looks like a priority 1. I think that sidewalk's on the north side, if I recall.
It's gonna be now. I
Yeah,
just wondered
On the
why.
north
that's
side,
the one we
right?
switched,
Yeah.
That's what
right?
we talked about on the
Yeah.
south
Yeah.
and it ended up being.
Yeah.
I don't think
So-
Joe was here.
Yeah, you-
I think you were gone, Joe.
Okay, but according to the plan, it has a priority 2, so I don't know what all that means, but there's a list in here. of
The
all-
priorities, so you got priority ones, I just didn't know how they decided which priority one to go next, you know?
Right,
So,
and there's a lot,
Yeah.
and it's in quadrants too,
I
the
think
plan.
the community should know that, so, okay.
Yeah, that's what.
Thank you.
That's all I have,
Okay.
just a little.
Any other comments or questions on the consent agenda? Roll call, please.
Burnett,
Yes.
Calgery,
Yes.
Comfort,
Yes.
Drost,
Yes.
Hermson,
Yes.
Ocean,
Yes.
Almond.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Next item up is to consider a resolution for levying a special assessment against, for a nuisance abatement. This was at 713 3rd Avenue East. It's in accordance with Oskaloosa Municipal Code 8.08.080. And there is a public hearing that's involved with this. Certified notices were sent to the property owner and a notice published in the Oskaloosa Herald. If approved, the property owner has 30 days from the time of filing with the Mahaska County Treasurer to pay for the abatement in the city clerk's office. And after 30 days, it's assessed on property taxes with a payment schedule at 9% interest. The nuisance abatement was performed in accordance with the municipal code on the property located at 713 3rd Avenue East. The timeline shows March 15 of 2022 that they were cited for junk and debris. This was the second offense of the same violation within a calendar year. And then on March 25th of 2022, 10 days later, emergency abatement was held in lieu of a violation not being cleared by the resident. And so I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this tonight? Okay. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Do we have a motion of support for this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Calgery,
Yes.
Comfort,
Yes.
Drost,
Yes.
Hermson,
Yes.
Ocean,
Yes.
Almond.
Yeah.
Burnett,
Yep.
Okay, that passes. Next up is the annual report on Oskaloosa's rental housing inspection program. So, let's see here. Jason, do we have you? Take it. Floor is yours. Nope, Sean.
Mayor, if it's okay with you, I'll get us started. I'll take us through the presentation, and then we'll ask Jason to step up and say a few comments.
Sounds great. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you. Okay, so every year in July, the Development Services Department gives the City Council an update and an annual report on our rental housing inspection program. We started this in 2017, and we're now just finished with, we've just recently finished completion of our 5th year in the project. The purpose here, I think for some of you who are new to the council may not be as familiar with it, the purpose is to protect the health and safety of the occupants of our rental housing, and also the occupants of surrounding properties, and to inhibit the spread of blight. So any housing unit, if it's rented or offered for rent within the city, needs to be registered. It's a $15 registration fee. That's per housing unit per year, and that fee is paid by the city. That's established by our fee schedule that we review every year. There's an additional fee, an inspection fee, which is $75 per unit. That is the first unit within the property, and then $25 for each additional unit. That is paid directly to the contractor, referenced earlier, and that's paid to Jason and his company, which is Iowa Inspections. That fee is paid per inspection, so if you only have your property inspected once, you pay the fee one time. If you have re-inspections, you would pay at each additional follow-up inspection. These fees have not changed in the 5 years since the program were established, so they've stayed the same over this 5-year period. So you can see here all of our activity over 5 years, and I'm seeing now that I probably should not put all of this on one slide. There's a lot here. But I'll point out a couple of the highlights. So generally speaking, we have 800 properties registered in the program, 1,700 dwelling units within those properties, so an average of a little bit more than 2 units per property. You can see here on this slide the inspection activity per year, and what I would call out in the 3rd year and the 4th year, activity really dropped, and you can probably imagine why. That's when COVID hit. The state shut down. We postponed the inspection program. We stopped going in people's houses for several months. Once everything started opening back up, we were slow to start our activity. We didn't start going into people's homes right away. We took our time. We only entered homes when the owners and tenants were comfortable with us doing so. If there were more safety issues or concerns out there, we took those units first. So we kind of ramped back up over that, but by and large, by the end of the 4th year, going into our 5th year, we were back up to full speed, inspecting more properties, and then you can see here how the properties did with inspections, either with the first inspection or the follow-up. And you can see it a little bit better on this graph here. So the blue bar on the left is the percentage of properties that passed the first inspection. The orange bar on the right is the percentage that passed after re-inspection. So you can see here with these trend lines, with re-inspections, the program has always done very well at getting compliance through the inspections. It sometimes just took more than one visit to each property. But the trend line, what I find interesting here is with the first inspection. So when we first started the program, properties that passed after the first visit, we were at 55%. We're now at 85%, and the trend line is still increasing. Now, I wasn't here when we first started the program, but I think we've probably exceeded our expectation on the number of properties that passed with that first visit. Here's a list of the most frequent violations. You've seen this list before. Now, they are in order of the most frequent violations that we see. The top 3, smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, block egress routes, and then lack of GFI outlets near water sources. Those are the top 3, and then it goes on from there. Now, what we like to do, we would, in the past, always give you photographs of some of our violation examples. I will tell you, photos are hard to come by nowadays because we just don't see the extreme situations that we did in the past. This is one here that we've seen recently. This would be an example of a blocked egress route. So you can see personal belongings stacked up in this room, and in the photo on the right, furniture blocking access to the door to the rear, and in the left photo, the egress window. And then on this next screen here, I think this is the same property. You can see a pile of personal belongings in the room. And then on the right, a heavily used litter box, which is overflowing onto the floor in the closet and into the room around it. So again, we just don't see this very often, but this is something that we've seen recently, and these are items that are always addressed. So as mentioned, the extreme cases are rare. We're just not seeing the multiple severe violations that we were seeing on the same property. Severe disrepair, we just don't have that anymore. We're not seeing condemnations, and we aren't seeing any evictions like we were looking at when we first started in years 1 and 2. Property owners are more responsive, and the attorney involvement is also rare as well. We do get some phone calls from tenants a few times a year, and we find that tenants are happy to have someone to talk to. They'll share their concerns, whether it's about a leak with plumbing above them, the unit above them, or just other concerns about the landlord. They're happy to have someone to listen to. So we will hear their concerns, we'll ask questions, we'll try to validate it, and if there are things to follow up on, we will call the landlord right away and ask them to report back, and we will verify that corrections have been made. And then we're also getting positive feedback from the community. Now, we did get some feedback from some residents tonight. I will tell you we haven't heard that I'm aware of, so that we will follow up on with that particular property owner. And we appreciate hearing those concerns. So conclusion, generally speaking, we try to get through each round of inspections within 4 years. We would have done it within 3 years, the first round, but COVID hits. We still completed it before 4 years, so we met our goal. We're aiming for still 4 years with this second round, but we think we would be closer to 3 years as well on that. And there's some overlap between those 2 rounds of inspections. So we talked about the success, we talked about the fewer violations. Our units are safer, they're more pleasant to live in. And then we've mentioned before as well, other communities have followed our lead. Knoxville was one of the first. We had meetings with them, but then other communities listed here are following our lead in our program as an example as well. So with that, Mr. Mayor, Council, I'll turn it over to Jason Van Alsdahl. He's the president of Iowa Inspections. Jason is the lead inspector, and his son Harry, he and his son Harry are the primary inspectors for the program.
Good evening, everybody. I'll leave some cards here in case you wanted to give me a call or shoot me an email. Happy to be here tonight. Happy to visit about our program. I view this as a large success for the community. When I'm talking to other communities on the phone and doing presentations, this is one of our biggest success stories. Based on where we started, and some of you were here when we started, it was a troublesome program to get off the ground, but we really did stick with it. The council had full support of the program, and Sean's right, we will address that. Actually, tomorrow morning I'll give Scott a call and take care of that. Because we do appreciate the communication, and he spoke about that. The communication is key, and back and forth, so that we can reach out and talk to our property owners, and they can reach out and talk to us, send us some pictures, work through the problems in the process, give the tenants a venue to have a concern about their property, give them a voice through the appeals process. There's actually a bona fide process if you don't have heat, if you have a mold issue, if you have any kind of a thing, we want to communicate about that, and there is a check and balance system that is built into that ordinance. I think overall, looking back at where we were to where we are now, I think that we can all agree that there has been a lot of legwork. There has been a lot of effort and expense that has put into the properties by the landlords. They are to be commended. They have put a lot of back effort into bringing these properties to meet the minimum code, and for that we really appreciate that. And we express it oftentimes when we're out there doing inspections. We don't want to overlook that work that was done to bring that property up to minimum code. That being said, some of you guys have never met before, but do you have any questions or concerns for me while I'm here? That's loud.
Well, I have a question. It's probably more towards the city in regards to the, I'm looking at the online checklist, inspection checklist. One, sounds a little pity, but there's no rev date on this checklist, so how do you know what version you're working with on the checklist?
So I think the checklist you're referring to is an attachment to.
Yeah, it's Appendix A.
Yeah, to the city's policy. So I think there's a footer on that policy that shows the revision date of each year.
Yeah, this PDF is not showing it. But that's, like I said, it's just more of a, so we know what version checklist we're working on in case if this checklist gets updated with new inspections or what have you, that we know we have the current checklist that we're working with.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I mean, it's small, but, and then the other thing is in regards to the, earlier tonight, the gentleman about the outlet. I know you're going to look into this, but I started thinking as well, some of these old houses are still 2-wire. And I believe the white is the ground to the box, you know, because you can also use use GFCIs on the 2-wire, right?
Yeah,
Right.
there's more to that story, but I won't get into it.
I know, well, it's not right, but yeah, I'd be curious what that was about, but you guys will handle it.
In the morning I will.
Lisa, you had a question?
I did. My daughter just graduated from college, and she's renting for the first time in Davenport, and then she had a concern with the landlord and didn't know where to go. Do you give information to all new renters, you know, that there's somebody they can talk to other than the landlord, you know?
Are you saying that if a renter called out of inspections and had a concern, is that what you're saying?
She had high expectations of her landlord, and then when he fell short, she's like, well, where do I go? Well, who do I talk to? You know?
That's honestly, that's where this ordinance shines, because before there was nothing.
Okay.
You know, if they would have called City Hall and had a complaint, there was not a lot the City Council could have done.
Okay.
This gives the city the authority and a program to actually follow to meet the minimum code.
So a new renter would have to know to call City Hall.
There is. All the information is actually right there on the website. They can actually
Okay.
have a video of me doing a landlord meeting on your city website.
Okay.
And then the appeals process is there. Now, they do have to give that property owner written and show proof that there is a concern that is legitimate.
Okay.
So that property owner has a right to fix and abate that nuisance.
Okay.
So, and when they're filing that appeal, they have to show that to the city. You can't just call and complain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would like to see something, so when you rent, you know, you have like a little packet or a little card or, you know, something that you get this kind of information. This is what the city does, you know, for your protection. Because when you're first rent, you don't know what to do.
Absolutely.
Was this
And-
checklist created, was it created by you, was it created by city? I'm new, was it created by,
No, it was actually created by the city of Ankeny through the School of hard knocks. They started back in 1982. And so they had already been through years and years of revisions, and we took that ball and ran with it.
Okay.
We tweaked it a little bit.
Yeah, but you've touched on it, and Joe to some degree as well touched on it, current standards. So I'm thinking about the City of Oskaloosa standards for a new home. Those standards change every few years, that there's a new fire code, there's a new electrical code. As far as renters are concerned, does the state have any governance that says we're going to evolve a little bit with what the codes are, or is that something you need to look at based on the age of the home?
Basically, when you're dealing with the rental properties, you're dealing with typically older homes, and that kicks you to the property maintenance and the existing building code. So we can't hold a 1930s home to the current standard building code right now. But with that, there is logic thrown into it. None of the windows that we see for egress windows would meet, they just wouldn't comply. But also throwing that logic into it, can a person of my size walk up, unlock, and get out that window safely, or the emergency personnel come into that? Oftentimes when we started the program, that was a big source of contention because there were windows out there of every shape and size and height. So you couldn't get out even if they were regular size because you couldn't even reach the windowsill. So that's a problem. But do we throw logic into that and we use that existing building code and the property maintenance code that the city has adopted?
Okay. And so is there any evolution that takes place in standards when it comes to discoveries of mold, for example? Indoor and outdoor, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so the building code definitely, the property maintenance code that you've adopted goes with that very clearly about unsanitary conditions, presence of mold, and we get called out for that more often than not in some of the new communities that we're going to and doing now. We're seeing that more with the standards that have been set, and the property owners, landlords know what to expect and they know what is tolerated. It's honestly kind of a non-issue anymore for us.
Okay. Okay, and that was why I was wondering, is if it's something the landlords know that that's what you're going to be looking for, and so it goes back to the checklist that, boy, when we drew that thing up way back when, I don't remember addressing mold in it, and so.
It's already there.
Okay.
Yeah, true. I'm sorry, I didn't cut you. Yeah, it's in the code, but that's something maybe should be on the checklist. That way, the owners, this helps them to get their house ready for inspection.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
people are going to say, well, let's.
Pre-inspections is a key thing. We stress it all the time, that we want those properties to pass the first time. Much to the contrary that has been said many times, we truly do want them to pass the very first time. And having that communication from the property owners to us, send us a picture, send a FaceTime, we do it all the time, and that's what we like.
Following up on that, so since I have several people that have rentals, so I fail the first time, and I'm just going to use something. It's a broken window. I'm hearing, we had to have them come back around, and we paid $75 again. So is there some kind of thing that we could incorporate if that is a broken window? If I took a picture of the front of my house, 1005 South whatever, and I took a picture of the window to be replaced, is there always a necessary need to have this? Okay.
No,
Okay.
we do that very, very often, and we actually have property owners right here that would attest to that.
Okay.
That when we have a few little, what I call dings, two
Okay.
or three, dings in there, we're not coming back for it. We want you to get it taken care of in rapid fashion, take pictures of it. We're going to note it in the calendar event so that the city sees it, and then we're going to note that it got taken care of right away.
Okay.
Yep. So we're not going to go back out for that.
And to that point, I mean, we've posted the test, so the answers to the test are posted already. There's no secrets here. So you could take that list and do your own inspection prior to having an inspection. So, I mean, that's part of it too, is take some responsibility for it. It's like when my kids were in 5th grade and had a spelling test and they gave them the words on Monday, there was no reason why they shouldn't be able to spell them on Friday, right? So, I mean, kind of the same thing here. So I was here at the beginning. I mean, I was here at the very beginning. Andrew Jensen and I brought this plan to the city council, and there was some hesitation on council's part about wanting to go through the initial pain of bringing this to fruition, right? And I just want to say thank you, because I think you're a big reason why it turned out as successful as it has turned out. I mean, your demeanor, I think even when the gentleman was up here asking us to do better, gave great credit to you for the program. So I think that goes a long ways for that. And I do think we could probably do better. I do think we could probably do some things, but I do think it's important that I think folks understand that this probably wouldn't have gone as well as it has gone if it wasn't for you. And I just want to say thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Well done.
So yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
We've had a lot of positive feedback on this. People were really glad that the city did bring this plan, this inspection program. But yeah, it was at the beginning. It was like, is this going to work?
We were the devil reincarnated, weren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you know what? Anything that's worth its weight in gold usually has some pain along the way, and that's really what happened here. So yeah.
Just a quick question, Sean. Maybe you can answer this. How often are the standards of the program reviewed? I mean, I know this was created in 2017, so here we are at the 5-year anniversary. And again, great program, great improvement in our rental properties, quality of life, safety, and all those things. But how often is staff looking at the program at ways we can improve? Is that an annual?
Yep, every year. So we did a wholesale audit after the first year, and then it's been done as part of the annual report every year. So by and large, these standards are simply enforcing what we already have in place for codes. So if we make any changes to the city code, they would automatically go into the program. But we also review our policy every year as well, and I'll give you another example that Amal recently suggested, is that we also check for cross connections, sump pump connections, if you will, to the city sanitary sewer. We've talked a lot about the sewer treatment plant upgrades that are needed. It's a big part of it. So that's something we're going to be doing, is we're going to review that checklist again and make sure that these items are added and in there, and then let the property owners know that it's coming.
Thank you. The other question I had, and Chief Vaughn, you're here too, with some of the items on the checklist, and there's that crossover between the rental inspection program and the nuisance code enforcement. How did it help me understand how that all works together? Because part of me says, I mean, we need to have these places cleaned up, but should garbage sitting outside the house cause a property to fail the ability to rent that? And how does, help me understand that?
That's a very good question. And it's actually where you're getting into the, speculation that was talked about tonight and kind of a little gray area. Yeah, subjectivity. I also own another company called Iowa Code Enforcement that does code enforcement, nuisance enforcement. My younger son Max does that for a few different communities. Of course, Dad has to step in to handle the problems of that. And with that, we never want to kick off what should be and is already paid for, and we're already on site, a certified inspector to the city's code enforcement for the nuisance equation. So if we're there on the property and we see the trash in the yard and the grass is this tall and there's cars up on blocks, we're going to address that. We're not going to say we've got a nuisance violation to kick this down the road. And with that, I would love to see the city have that same standard, and I think that they actually are kind of getting that rounded off to where it's going to be the same kind of template that all homes are being held to. That's easier said than done. That's much easier said than done.
But I get what you're saying, but I have a little issue with that because you're doing a rental inspection, and to me that sounds more like a nuisance issue. So I mean, I understand you're inspecting the property.
Yeah.
But I can move in 6 months later. I've got cars on blocks, and that doesn't mean my house is unsafe and I wouldn't pass an inspection. That means that I need to call Scott and have him. I think we're crossing over on the. I think that's what I'm hearing from people is we're crossing over to the nuisance into the inspection. I don't have a problem with the inspection. I work for Mid-American. I've been in crap holes. I'm going to be honest with you. But I don't have a problem. But I think sometimes maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know if the nuisance is, I think the inspection should be held, but if I've got, I don't know, I guess I'm not sure that, I guess I don't know that you would be the nuisance officer.
Let me kind of answer that for you. We're never going to stop a property owner from moving a tenant in, ever. We don't want to do that. We're not in the business of putting a property owner in a state of not making money on that income property. What we do want to do is hold it to that minimum standard that the city has set. And with that, if we have the grass is up here and the roof needs replaced and all these different things.
So that's in that checklist.
Oh yes, yeah. We'll work with them on that timeline, and sometimes when it's 150 degrees outside, we've got to be flexible on that. We always are. We want that communication. Hey, we're working with 3 different contractors. We can't get a roof right here. It's too hot. That's great. Let's bump it back to November 1st or something that way. But we also will toe the line and make them follow through. And quite honestly, they do follow through. They might grumble, but they'll do it.
Right.
To reiterate, when we was going through what you were just talking about, the nuisance, it is on the checklist here for the housing inspection. Talks about garbage, junk, debris, rodents, things like that. So he's doing the initial inspection, he sees all that, they're gonna handle it. Once the people are in there living and decide
Right.
to make their yard all
They come back
dirty-
3 years later and they've got,
Right.
now they've
Well,
got nuisance rather than inspection to
Right,
me.
so if somebody moves in after house has been inspected and they're keeping the yard a mess, then that's gonna trigger the nuisance.
Yeah.
And changing that behavior, and that's what it is typically, is changing the behavior of the people that are living in those homes. Having the property owners, let them use Iowa inspections as a scapegoat, calling them saying, listen, you gotta mow the lawn. If you don't mow the lawn, we're gonna get a complaint on this, and Jason and Harry are gonna have to be out here, and then we're gonna have to do an inspection. So oftentimes, we're thrown under the bus happily. Let them, because we don't have to deal with them. We don't have to, deal with them on a monthly basis, but it allows that property owner to have an avenue to get it taken care of. Yeah.
So it sounds like you're doing a nice job, that balance between privacy, because you want a certain privacy when you rent a place
Right.
versus health.
Right.
You also can't have it so filthy. You've got bed bugs and all sorts of things that are affecting all of the properties that
Yes.
are rented, because most of them are multiple,
Yeah.
So what happens in one unit sadly affect, roaches go everywhere. But you do want that,
We do.
privacy and health,
Yeah, and oftentimes it's just that communication between the property owner and us or the city to, talk through the problem. This is what I've got going on, because every situation is different, and then we can come to a resolution in a timely manner. And we do.
Do you have anything at the college where because again, there are those first time.
For privately owned homes around the college,
Okay.
oh yes, very often, but the dorms, those are called out.
No, I know
We
those
don't
are,
do those, no.
but there's a place as a student, because they don't know what to do.
Yeah, no, we don't go in the dormitories, no.
No. I mean, do you have a place where there's an office or cards or, when I rented at Iowa State, there was an office in the union. And, when you had a problem with
Yeah.
the rental unit,
Yeah.
there
All of
was
our
someplace you could
information
go and
available on
talk
the
to.
website.
Yeah. So anyway, I just taught community college for 30 years. They're just operating at a loss of how to do process,
Yeah.
So anyway, a friendly face, like Steve said, goes a long way,
If anybody had a question that they didn't remember tonight and want to shoot me an email or a phone call or later on, I'm happy to talk to you anytime. So,
Okay, very good.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jason.
thank you guys.
Appreciate
Have a
it.
Good evening.
Yeah, take care.
Perhaps a nice segue. Item C has to do with code enforcement. We have that quarterly report. Yeah.
know.
The floor is yours, Chief.
Getting worried about my own property.
I've worked with Jason at a couple of meetings at a town that I might have been familiar with before I came here. The town did not want to do what you did, so kudos to you for hiring him, because I think he does wonderful things, and I think his company does good things. So I would just kind of for Sean, you do have those apartments every once in a while, a handful of them that are absolutely atrocious, and they're fire hazards, and not very often, but I just please reach out to us when you have those, because inevitably we're going to end up there sooner or later in a bad situation, and it's only going to put our guys in danger. And then, do you have landlord meetings, like an association, or does the city meet with landlords?
There is no association. We will meet with landlords if we make changes to the program. So if there are significant changes that are noteworthy, we will schedule meetings, right? Yep. So it's been a couple of years because we haven't made any changes to the program.
Perfect. Yep. Code enforcement quarterly report for April 1st through June 30th. Hard to believe it's been another 3 months, but it has. I told you I would come to you with more cases than we had last time, and I think last quarter we had 37. The grass started growing, and we had 140 this time. Obviously, the goal of the program stays the same. I'm not going to go over that page. We see that every time. As I said, 140 cases in the second quarter. So far, 123 of those have been closed, leaving 17 open. Most of those open are dilapidated structures, which we are finding a lot of in town. And we are having to do a lot of legwork trying to find the actual person to, have a conversation with or mail to about those. So Zach has been doing a great job. 17 from 140. Kudos to him. He's hit the ground running, and
He does a good job.
Yeah, had a very, very busy quarter. So the next slide kind of breaks it down into the dilapidated, hard surface parking, garbage, illegal burning, grass, and miscellaneous. So you have those numbers there, the total 140 and then the 17 that are still open. And then the next gives you the month totals, and then the owner occupied versus rental that we have been having to send the notices to, or people buying stuff on contracted sale. You'll notice that the total properties for this quarter down at the bottom comes out to 101. We had 140, so that means there were several properties that had more than one nuisance violation tagged to their property, still getting us to that 140. Third quarter goals, obviously Zach wants to get the 17 closed that he still has open. Really working on the dilapidated structures, working with Sean and Mike on those, and Dave obviously, so that will obviously be ongoing. And then the grass is starting to slow down, but the weeds are ramping up. So if you see the weeds, give us a call. A lot of what we're hearing now is people are walking on the sidewalks, the bushes are growing over the sidewalks, not giving them that 36 inches or whatever that width of the sidewalk is. So if you see it, give us a call. I dealt with someone earlier last week, and it was a renter, and I drove by today. It was 3 days later, and the bushes were trimmed back. So communication overall, like Jason said, Jason, right? Is good. Communication is key. So a couple of the properties that I want to touch on, 809 South Market. I actually got the privilege of going to this one when it was first reported. You can see down in the bottom, 3 slides, the tires, the trash. I did find a very decayed deer head in that one that smelled very, very ripe.
Wow.
Once again, we mailed the letter. The property owner got a hold of us. We had that line of communication. You can see at the top, he took it seriously and had it cleaned within a week after the communication was started. So we were happy to see that. 1510 South Market. Developer in town has a lot of rental properties. Didn't know, biggest thing that I get frustrated with is landlords that do nothing but collect a check and don't look at their properties until Jason goes and inspects them every 3 years, and then they're like, I can't believe this was like this. Well, you can check them, you just have to give them notice. So cleaned it up, no problem on Market. 905 North B was a complaint that we got about a large tree limb down, a pile of leaves and debris that was taken care of, as was 1002 North 2nd, debris in the corner there. And then, of course, every year we have the railroad to deal with their right-of-ways, and that's a whole other conversation, but we did get some compliance this time, and they did do some mowing, so that looks much better. I need to think what else I was going to say. For the most part, I wanted Zach to be here tonight because he's been doing this for 6 months now. He couldn't get away to have the kids, but you guys need to see him. That's the person to call in. He's doing a great job. He has a really good rapport, with the community. We don't like to be the guys going to the house, but we have to because you make the rules, and that's what we do. We're going to work with people. We don't want to take that garbage truck to their house and clean up. We will if we have to, but we're working with people. Sometimes, like I said, the 17 cases that are open, some of those are that where we are seeing progress, and as long as we feel that that progress is legitimate and genuine, we're going to keep working with them. So, is there any questions you have for me? Yes, ma'am.
Is the federal post office on your list of 17 cases?
That's a good one.
Yes, because I've had several discussions. Well, I know the Texas landlord, and then it's a federal building, and so the manager's trying to coordinate between, and I didn't know if I could file a report as city, so I refrained.
We went there probably a week and a half ago.
Okay.
After having sent a letter, and we talked with the postmaster that was there, and I was almost speechless when she said, well, they can drive around.
Oh, man.
I have
I'm like, that's not the point.
I don't know the
And she said,
Oh, I don't know the
we're
postmaster.
having a hard time getting hold of people. They're in New York. I said, well, you get us that information, we'll get a hold of them, and we'll let them know that the city's involved. I did see last Friday on my way home, somebody was in there with a measuring stick, measuring wheel. So I'm hoping that somebody was, so I'll make a note to touch base with,
And I didn't know if you could do this. This is something I've had to do as a renter before when the landlord would refuse to make, necessary and safe repairs. So she had said that they were going to fill it themselves and then take that out of the rent.
that's not my monkey or my zoo, and if they want to do
Okay,
that,
so she changed her tune then.
And
That
that's
was
technically private property.
That's between them and the landlord, as long as it gets taken
She said the
care
same
of,
thing to
that's
me,
what we're-
drive around,
Mm-hmm.
because I asked about it.
I can't believe people haven't.
My fear is, it's dangerous, and also they don't have the ADA buttons working. I had to help, a man out in his wheelchair. There's elderly people there. I'm going to pop an expensive tire, and I'm suing. So it's just really unsafe. There were ducks one day.
I don't know anything about the button, but I will just let you know.
Yeah.
I'll check it first to make sure.
Yeah, it's just the idea. There's no place. It's a federal building. You have to go there to mail your packages. There's no alternative.
Well, Chief, I just want to say thank you for the attention to South Market, and I'm sure you're looking at North Market and A Avenue and those corridors wherever that's everybody's first impression coming into town. To have two of them on South Market that you've successfully dealt with, that's kudos to you. And then I was going to ask the question about Union Pacific, and you're right, it's an annual thing, and we've done the assessments to the tax roll and everything in the past too. I'm glad you finally got a hold of somebody to mow it. Now we'll see if they do it the next time.
I told them to keep that contact.
Yeah,
I'd like to
absolutely.
reiterate,
So
I've
thank you.
used Zach twice, and he's phenomenal. He was out there the very next day. In fact, one day he was there the same day, and the next. So he is very approachable. It would be nice to have him come to council.
They'll make it. He definitely
He's
On the flip side, because we use the stick quite often, do we have any carrots? I know in Winterset I got a gardening award one time. I still remember that. There's some really lovely properties that I think would be kind of nice to, give an award or give some kind of, recognition, or, you got a little star and there's on your property.
The chamber
does the chamber do that?
The chamber has a yard of the
Okay.
sale, or yard of the sale. Yard of the
Well, they used to. They don't anymore. Yeah, they don't anymore. They used to. So.
Yeah, they don't no more.
We had a committee in Fairfield that was beautification. committee,
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
actually went around and gave the rose award to different properties.
Oh.
So I do not want to do that.
I won't be on that committee, but.
me neither.
Anything else from me?
Thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chief.
A little friendly competition is nice.
Moving on to item D. This is to consider a resolution authorizing a professional services agreement with RDG Planning and Design to prepare a comprehensive housing needs analysis. So the housing needs analysis, it's a detailed inventory and assessment of projected housing demand, often prepared by municipalities with the housing goals to help identify issues and solutions with the local market. The reports are useful to developers by providing demographics and market information. The prior housing assessments were completed in 2017 and in 2012. Staff issued a request for proposals on May 31st, responses due June 21st. City got 6 back. They were reviewed. 3 of the 6 exceeded the budget of $20,000. You can see the grid there of the various folks that bid on the job. RDG's submittal meets the project scope and the least cost, and the firm is highly qualified to complete the work. Their proposal has 2 different approaches. each with certain advantages. Staff is recommending we approve the attached resolution authorizing staff to negotiate and enter in to an agreement with RDG to complete the scope of work for a cost not to exceed $17,000. Do we have a motion supporting this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Discussion.
Yeah, so I know that we did a study back in, I think it was 17, the max build, and then we just did a senior housing. Have we like internally updated numbers since then to know how many units have been actually made and kind of what that impact has been and for structures that's been taken down?
I do have some numbers. I actually sent that to them all this morning. So the Maxfield study, and I'm happy to send this out as a follow-up. The Maxfield study showed two things. It showed market demand, and it broke down each of these, and then also recommended units through 2025. So I'll give you an example, and I can go into all of these. Single-family homes, they recommended a range of 85 to 100 units, and that was from 2017 to 2025. We have built since then 29 units, and then if you average what we typically see by the market per year, an additional 24 units. Two-family, they recommended 60 to 75 units. We built 32, and planning an additional 12 through 2025. Rental housing, they recommended 80 to 100 units. That was market rate. We built 44, and that was primarily the Burrell warehouse, I would say. Built 44, an additional 24 planned for that development. And then it goes on from there. There are some that we haven't done, such as affordable rental units or subsidized rental units since the plan was completed. And then they've recommended quite a bit for senior housing. Now those numbers I think were updated when the county and chamber completed the county-wide study, but they have numbers in there as well. We are currently planning, if you've seen the updates, 28 independent living units, 30 assisted living units, and 10 memory care units. And that's all by the American Construction team that's underway for the Jeff Smith property. So that's, I would say we've done roughly half of what was recommended as part of that plan.
And is this,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
is this working with the housing committee that, like through the chamber, since that is one of the initiatives underneath the chamber?
Yeah.
So they know about this, the city wants to do another housing study?
They are,
Okay.
yes. And this came out of that committee as one of the recommendations.
Sean, the two proposals from RDG, I know the agenda item is to approve RDG for scope not to exceed 17,000. Is the intent that they would do the second option? Do the full study?
Yeah, although I think there's some advantages to the other one as well.
Okay.
I think we may be to the point with all of the work that we've done recently for housing, the comprehensive plan, the list of sessions. We have a current advisory committee in place. There may not be a need to establish it as a committee.
Okay. And that was going to be a question too, because I know with this, you just said it right there. Do we need to, especially since RDG is just done, is finishing up our comprehensive plan? Do they need to do all that work all over again? But the other thing, I know the conversations that I've had with developers, you've had the same ones. I want to make sure that whichever report and study that we do meets the developers' needs as they're applying for incentives and grants and all the different funding avenues that they have, so that we don't try to save a few $1,000s and that causes us to either have to go back and increase the scope later, or it just causes the developer to walk away because we don't have the proper information that they need to continue that on.
Absolutely. We don't want to fall short of this.
Yeah, thank you.
No, go ahead, Joe.
There's some other things that we've done since the 2017. I think it was also on that list was the rental inspection program.
Yeah. Want me to take you through the list?
Well, and also what about the apartments behind Casey's there? The Ironwood. That was supposed to be.
They were supposed to be market-based, or at least we thought at the time.
Right.
But
when we first got those built. So what is it now? Isn't it per?
No.
2016?
Is it?
Was that before?
Oh, it might have been.
What do you call it?
Might have been under 15.
Yeah. But yeah, if you want to go through that list.
Yeah, please.
Yeah,
let's
Beavis,
do it,
right.
yeah.
So you mentioned the first one here, implemented rental housing inspection program. We created the upper story housing life safety no interest loan program. That's the housing trust fund committee. Reviewed and modified the existing housing programs, demolition, first time home buyer. We continue to market the HEAD Regional Housing Trust Fund, which is what the Area 15 Regional Planning Commission administers. We did a placemaking study, which included housing components and recommendations in there. Partnership with the county and chamber, that's the housing committee that Janet mentioned earlier. We did research and budgeting for the city's share of the housing revolving loan fund. That came out of the placemaking study. We were ready to go on that, and we just didn't have the interest from the other partners as well, but that's still out there. We've marketed and actually met with potential developers for the Elks Lodge building for housing adaptive reuse. Eventually they determined it was just too expensive to do anything with at this point. The housing committee completed an available buildings and sites inventory. And as part of the committee's work, we also met with the superintendent, reviewed the high school's building trades program. We researched and took a tour of the Homes for Iowa production site, which is up in Newton. It's where they produce the homes that are delivered across the state. And I know the committee and the chairman in particular would very much like to get one of those homes in Oskaloosa if we can find a site. We've applied for the IEDA Downtown Housing Grant. Actually, Scott Versteeg, who was here earlier, if you recall, was that applicant. We weren't funded. We're going to reach out to IEDA and see if we have other opportunities here in the future as well for him. We completed a senior housing study, and we're currently going through a site selection planning and financial feasibility study for that senior housing project. And we're also holding meetings and tours with potential housing developers.
And then out of the comp plan, as we're currently working on that, we've identified some sites for new housing, like outside, within the 2 mile radius. So that's going to be, because right now we're doing a lot of filming here and there, but we need land to build more housing like we're doing down here south of town. Affordable housing, people that can afford. Anybody know what the median income is for Mahaska County is per household? Last time I heard it was like 60 something, 63,000. No, any idea? I'm just curious. Because my concern is, we want to build homes. People want homes, want to buy their own home. But some folks cannot afford 200,000, 180,000 type homes. And of course, I'm going to hear the same music again. Well, that's what it costs to build homes today. Okay, whatever. Depends how big of a home you want.
600 square foot home.
Yeah, so dip in that profit margin. That's what it is. But
Joe, to jump in, just to answer your question, I just checked. Google says 56,417 from the 2020 census, apparently.
Also, one goal of us updating our needs assessment is to apply for a designation on distressed workforce housing community. And if we get that designation, developers will be able to take advantage of a state incentive. And it's actually a great incentive that is designed to incent housing development all over Iowa. A lot of money, 17.1 million, is dedicated for smaller communities like our city. And if we want to stay competitive, we want to have that advantage. That program, I think, through that program, the state can refund sales tax, and developer can recoup up to 20% of those projects' costs. So it's a great program to take advantage of, and actually developers shop around for those incentives in communities.
My understanding is you also can't let it get too old. That these things have to be no more than 3 years old. Is that right?
Correct. So that need assessment cannot be more than 3 years.
And that's from the state, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
For the state incentives. Yep.
And is there some control too on the design of the properties and the quality? I walk by the subsidized living apartments. There's no green space for the kids. They play in the parking lot. It's just, so I don't want another replication of that,
No, it's pretty generous.
Okay.
Actually, they raised the cap for the maximum cost of the unit. It used to be 200,000, and now I think it's close to 300, or between 200 and 300. So
Construction
it's,
cost.
yes, it's quality, quality housing.
Because I think that's the advantage of having the rental inspection program. You start getting a quality reputation in your town, and that matters. So it's just the decent thing to do.
I have one follow-up question for Sean. Is that something that, like, the chamber and the county are interested in partnering again, like we did for the senior housing study, to get that accomplished to meet the needs of the community? Have we reached out and asked them if they're willing to help split costs again?
We've discussed that a little bit. I know the county is not interested. They see this strictly as a city report, city study within our city limits. So I think they see very limited benefit. We've had the discussions with the chamber, and I haven't had an indication from them they want to participate. They are participating in the senior housing study as well. I think that's to the tune of 10,000, if I remember right. So substantial investment in that.
I've got a couple comments. First of all, I want to comment on what you just said, which irritates me. Not that you said it, but that it's true, which is, where does half of the population of Mahaska County reside? In the city. Aren't they representative of me as well? So that means they don't represent me. Don't I get equal representation from the county? I don't like that excuse that, well, it's a city thing. I mean, I'm in the county. I'm a Mahaska County resident, so they should participate.
They can't pay.
Okay, so I'll get off that soapbox. I'll go on to the next one now. And my thing's got to do with government. This whole thing kind of irritates me a little bit. And I had a conversation with them all this morning, and I appreciate her response, and that, it lasts for 3 years. But here, I'm gonna kind of beat us up a little bit. If I were running this business, if this was our business, we would get about a D or an F on this, and I'll tell you why. This list that we have that Sean just read off, I mean, he's honest about the fact that I would guess that there's very little on this list of activity at the top, the results that were because of the housing study in 2017. We just said that the rental housing inspection was passed in 2017. That work had all occurred prior to that. So it was prior to the study in 2017. So taking credit for that off the study, I think, is a little disingenuous. And then beyond that, every listed thing on here is an activity. You know what? In business, we don't salute activity. We salute results. And so we have these reports and these things that we pay for, and whether they get dropped in the middle or whatever happens, or we feel good about it in government because we do all of this activity, we're busy. Lots of busy work. But what do we have to show for it at the end for our money that we spent? And in business, you wouldn't stay in business doing this. And so I'm going to challenge us that if we're going to spend this $17,000, that 3 years down the road, we can say, and we can point to that and say, because of the funding that Amal's talking about, that we're able to say that we signed some people up to do building because of the study, because Bob Burrell built those apartments regardless of whether we had a 2017 study or not. I know Bob, and so I know that's what happened there. So, I mean, it's not that I don't want us to feel good. I just want us to feel good about what we should feel good about. We should earn it, and I don't feel we earned it. So I do think there's some concern in the community, I know there is, that we're going to go out and spend another $17,000 and get nothing to show for it. So I challenge us, me included, that we do something with it other than just have activity. We've got some results to show for it. So.
And I agree with what you just said 100%, because there was also another study prior to 2017, right? And every time we do these studies, it's kind of like the same music again. Here's what we need. That's great. You know what we're going to do. And there's been some things we've done. I always forget the name of those apartments behind shoe department.
Bob Burrell, yeah.
Yeah, okay, there's that, and then of course behind Casey's, and then what do you call it study? Our inspection, the rental inspection, that came kind of together at the same time when that study was happening too. But I think we need to start looking more into some old buildings we have in the city that are empty. And maybe we can convert, like we've done downtown on some of these other buildings, the upstairs, living there on some of the buildings we've done. I'm sure there's buildings sitting around this, in the city somewhere that are just empty, and maybe there's a potential with those that can be converted, updated, and so forth. You know,
Well, so all of this, if you go back and look at the 2017 study, it quite frankly shows that you can't get a return on investment if you're charging $900. The numbers are if you're charging $900 for rent in 2017, you couldn't break even. You would lose approximately $10,000 on it, or how many units were in the study, because it just didn't make sense. You couldn't cash flow. And so after talking to Amal this morning and going after what she's going after, we have to find a way to subsidize folks to be able to spend their money in town to where it makes sense for them to spend that money. And if this doesn't do that, then we're just blowing hot air. And so I told her this morning, I'm trusting them all that we're gonna be able to do this. So
And that's why we're pushing for this, trying to get this community funding and leverage what we have.
Yep.
And I want us to be patient, because housing is a long-term policy, just like economic development. We cannot expect return like tomorrow.
Right.
It's
So
gonna take years.
when you say years, so Joe just said it, but I'll go back to 2017 and we haven't seen many results. And let's go back to when I first started here in 2014. Well, no, I don't know when I came out, 2015, 2016. So I don't mistake wanting something done for impatience, because it's been 5 or 6 years, right?
Correct, but this round we're covering all steps and taking it down from an assessment to a plan and then action.
Right.
So we're going to follow through, and we're looking at gaps. If there's gap in funding,
That's
we'll
the key
go
word,
after
follow
the
through.
funding.
Follow through.
Right,
So,
and
yeah.
Steve, tagging on to you, I think number one, Amal, you talk about, I think you call it the distressed workforce housing designation. It's another time where we have to say our community is distressed and blighted,
to get money.
so that we can get the money that we need to do the projects that need to be done, right? Our community is
Whatever it
not
takes.
Distressed, it's not blighted, but it's just
can I
bothers me that it's called that. But Sean knows this because we sit on that housing committee together. When we were talking about doing that senior housing study, the conversation was, if we get the senior housing study and we do the same thing that we did as a city with that as we did with the Maxfield study, and to a certain extent I think that it was done, yay, we did a housing study, stuck it on a shelf, and we didn't market the needs of our community to those developers. If we do that with the senior housing study, we're throwing that money away. And I am happy to see that we are in discussions with developers as a follow-up to that senior housing study that we've done.
Good to hear.
And I know from a discussion that I've had with a developer, and Sean's been involved in some of those conversations as well, that the housing study, the date of the housing study, when it was last done, was one of the first questions that was asked. Have you done a housing study? Yes. How old is it? It's 5 years old. We need that updated, so that we want to come to your community, but before we can do anything, we need more current numbers. So I'm confident that spending the $17,000, there will be follow-up, because we've got people sitting there waiting for the numbers. If that doesn't happen, Steve, I'm with you. It needs to happen. I'm confident it will happen.
I don't want the study to go like most of these companies do. They have like a national format, and they just fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
I want the study to be conducted here in Oskaloosa. I don't care what national does. What's the city's needs for the study for whatever we need? And back on the senior living type, what kind of study you doing? Because that was in the last 2017. We already know we needed senior living.
Right.
So,
but Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's more. Instead of being a component of the study, it was a very focused
just
senior
for that.
housing study.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, what are you studying? What's being studied?
Like if we needed memory care, assisted living, how many units for that? It was focused specifically with that. How many people, how many single homes would that free up then to make
and that
available?
was for the city of Oskaloosa.
Yes,
right?
that was
So I sat in on those results when they were given in the basement over at the chamber at the bank, And those results weren't any better than some of the others, and the fact that they did give all the information you're talking about. It sounds wonderful. The problem is that he said, based on the economics in Oskaloosa, we're not an attractive community to build at because of the demographics. And so back to, we're going to have to figure out a way to subsidize something to get a builder here. Now, God bless you, Bob. If you got somebody going, and I'm excited to hear about that. But that's the problem we have, is that we have a study. We feel good we got a study. We know the data, but we still don't have a senior housing plan, right? Or not a senior housing plan. We don't have a senior housing facility. So having the plan doesn't make me feel any warm and fuzzy. I'll believe it when I see a shovel in the ground. That's when I'll see it. So that's what we have to figure out is, okay, it told us, I sat there and listened to the gentleman, and it was thorough. And to your point, Joe, I think it was for our community. So I thought they did a really good job, and the data was very pertinent to us. Now what do we do with it? How are we going to step up as a community and say, well, we're going to have to subsidize something, we're going to have to make something available, we're going to have to do tax increment financing, we're going to have to do tax abate, we're going to have to do something to lure people to come to our community to follow through on that plan. And that's up to us at this table to do that. But so far, we've not had any of those conversations that I'm aware of.
I think that the housing committee has been working on the next step, the plans to follow up with how to bring investors into it, because that is one of the priorities they're working with the city and the county on, on that need.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, good.
So I think it's just how do we communicate what is truly going on with, that committee, and to make sure that we're not double.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I understand.
Yeah.
So who is this housing committee? Is this in the chamber? Was that appointed by the city?
Yeah, no, the chamber and the city and the county, all three went together on the senior housing study, didn't they? Didn't we all three put money into that? Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's a committee underneath the chamber. It's one of the 4 buckets that they focus on, like workforce.
Yeah, I know about tourism.
Yeah, tourism.
tourism.
Yep. Quality of life.
Well, I was going to add too, our status, back to the USDA status and that too. We have a lot in this region where people can't afford places in Oskaloosa or can't find places, so they live in Rose Hill or they live in What Cheer or, other places as well. So I don't, there's always ways to look at different demographic numbers, and that Oskaloosa is the prosperous place, in this district. So is there a way to consider that when we're looking at housing subsidies, that this could bring in people who might want to live in Oskaloosa, who are of a lower income?
Isn't that a 50-mile radius?
Yes, the housing market, I believe the whole county, because
So
people
it's not
can
just
commute.
Oskaloosa, it's,
They have
Correct.
a radius around Oskaloosa that you
Yeah.
come
We beat that to the bush.
I know, I think we drove some of our audience away, so I don't know what they wanted.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Are you sure? Roll call, please.
Comfort,
Yes.
Drost,
Yes.
Hermson,
Yes.
Ocean,
Yes.
Allman,
Yes.
Burnett,
Yes.
Caligari.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Gets us to item E. This is to consider an ordinance amending Oskaloosa Municipal Code, Chapter 10.24, having to do with stop and yield requirements. The city has added Partnership Drive as a new street within the city limits. The new street intersects with Green Street as a T intersection and requires an amendment to Chapter 10.24, the stop and yield requirements of the Oskaloosa Municipal Code, to have an enforceable stop sign at the intersection. Staff is recommending we approve the first reading of the ordinance as presented. Do we have a motion of support?
So moved. Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Are you sure you want to ask that question?
Yeah.
Go ahead. I got a question.
Yeah, we can drift philosophical on stop signs if you like.
Would a yield sign work? I don't know.
That's kind of what they see stop signs. I'm going to get killed one day.
We could like we could put shark teeth on the ground too,
Roll call, please.
Drost,
Yes.
Hermson,
Yes.
Ocean,
Yes.
Allman,
Yes.
Burnett,
Yes.
Caligari.
Yes.
Comfort,
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Okay, gets us to the end of the regular agenda. Report on items from city staff. City manager, anything?
No.
Okay. City clerk, anything?
no sir, thank you.
City attorney?
Nothing, thank you, sir.
Okay. Council members, in our narrative, we talk about this being the end of a calendar quarter, and so if you sit on any boards and commissions, it's an opportunity to speak to what your board and commission's been doing lately. Steve, how about we start with you?
I'm fine. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Rhonda?
We hired our new landfill manager, and seems to be a great fit, and things are going well.
Where are they from?
He's from Carlisle.
Oh, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Is it
Yeah, I think he is Carlisle.
Carlisle.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yep,
Good
he
to hear.
actually worked for a consulting firm,
Yeah.
Evora.
Yeah.
And so he brings with him experiences of a number of other places that he consulted for.
That's good.
Pretty cool guy.
Yeah.
Bob?
No, sir, thank you.
Yeah?
Yeah, so we just finished up at the Chamber in Main Street, the 3 Friday after 5s. The second Friday after 5 was the biggest crowd we've had in, I think, 2 or 3 years now. So that was really good. And then Art on the Square had the most attendance in probably the last, 5 years or so, with over 1,200 people. So that was really neat to see that vendors were also up, I think 3 to 4 vendors, and then we also had more windows decorated. We do have a Sweet Corn Serenade next Thursday. There are still available spots for sign-up, so next Thursday night they need people kind of the evening shift. So if
Sean and
you're
I will be
available,
working. Well, come visit us. We'll be there.
please help. We appreciate it, and then we're looking forward to the Christmas events coming soon.
So what's the temperature for sweet corn?
It'll be hot.
It'll be hot.
Okay. It's a
Just
cool
bring your
place somewhere.
appetite.
It always is,
hot.
right?
Yeah, just bring your appetite.
So.
Joe?
We're still working on the comp plan. More to come later.
Okay.
Nothing.
So does the comp plan get into housing?
It will
Do
be.
we want to talk about that?
We found some spots in the map to build a house at.
Ah, okay. Okay.
But we was also talking about land. So,
Well,
Charlie, how about
we
you?
can get some land.
I sit on the MCRF board, and we meet this Wednesday. I'll be there via Zoom yet.
Okay. Okay. And I guess I don't have anything that I care to report on us. So at this point, we don't have a closed session. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Amazing.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.